Hi, I'm Tracey Soltis.
And I'm Kali Alfaro. And you're listening to the Mind Body Studio, a place for anyone who wants to reach their full potential, thrive, and create a life filled with vitality.
Each week, we'll bring you our expertise, giggles, and a splash of quirky to explore real and relevant topics to help you along your life's journey.
We'll bring you science, psychology, and practicality to real life issues.
So, thanks for listening. We know you're going to love it. All right, welcome back everyone to our little mini episode today. Mini. We're planning to talk about how to deal with difficult people.
So this has been brought up to our attention both by a couple of listeners and some people in our practice.
Yeah.
So we thought we would dedicate like a little mini episode to talking about how do we deal with negative people, because not everyone is as awesome as we would like them to be, right?
Yeah, totally. It's our externalization of what we expect others to be, and that's not always the case, and that can lead to feelings of, overwhelmed, exhaustion, kind of avoiding people, not wanting to engage or be social with them. So it's kind of good to work out how we can deal with these people, especially if they're people that are in our lives and they are going to be a long-term person. And I think I'm going to let you start this conversation off, because I'm sure that you have this happen in your clinic all of the time.
So look, I think it's important to acknowledge that life is hard sometimes, and not everyone has the emotional intelligence or resilience to be able to cope with that.
Yeah.
And that sometimes translates into people being a little bit narky or mean or just really not very nice.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to note that, our sort of animal instinct is to react and defend ourselves and maybe like get angry or something. And although, we are animals, we're part of the animal kingdom, this is about how can you become your own master. So sometimes we get really, really triggered by certain people or things.
I love that word, triggered. I feel like we use it a lot, but it's true.
It's so true.
It gives you a physical response, a mental response, an emotional response. And yeah, I think holding on to that response and really having a good look at where that comes from is a way that we can improve ourselves on our journey. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And you need to understand that this is a survival mechanism. So when we get triggered and we get all sweaty and, we flush, we get hot and all this stuff, it's a survival mechanism. So this is indicating to you that you are feeling threatened. You're feeling threatened by the experience or the person, and your body's reacting in that way. So it's a good reaction, because when I say good, it means that your body's warning systems and mechanisms are actually working. But once that reaction is over, you want to overcome it, right? So you don't want to be stuck in that state, because that creates stress, pain, inflammation, really bad relationships. So it's something that you kind of want to, if you do react easily and if you do react easily and frequently to people, you want to take note of that so that you can go, okay, I'm feeling really triggered, and then what do I do about it?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I want to highlight is that we all have different backgrounds that lead us to this point. We've all had different upbringings, social experiences, life experiences, family experiences, and we can't really expect everybody to be where we are. I mean, some people are they're on completely different pathways to what we are, and that can cause a lot of friction, especially at the moment, because obviously the world is going through quite a massive universal kind of scenario, and people are sitting on all different sides of the seesaw, so to speak, of what's right, what's wrong, should we do this, should we not do this, and there's so many opinions. And I think we have to remember that when someone does establish an opinion, we have to consider that we might not have the same opinion as them, and that's okay. but we need to be open to that. The best thing that we can do is to be open and accepting and hear what they have to say and take that on board. But
wouldn't you say though, Trace, that it's difficult to be open and to hear what someone else has to say if you're feeling triggered? Like if you're feeling triggered and you go straight into defensive mode.
Yeah.
Right?
If it's triggering you from a trauma perspective, then yeah, it's really difficult because people are living.
But some people get triggered
cycles
without a trauma response, right?
Yeah.
So if someone says something really offensive to you and you get triggered, you're going to go straight into defense mode. There is that sort of split second where you don't have the capacity to actually stop and think, oh, what's the other person doing? I wonder what's happening in their lives. You're just going to go straight in and defend yourself.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Yeah, 100%.
So that's what I want people to be aware of. That is a natural response, right? It's a natural response, which is why this is what I kind of preach so much in my practice. The more that you do your daily work, and what do I mean by that? Journaling, gratitude, meditation, exercise, good sleep, breath work, the more you are looking after yourself and keeping your head above water, really processing and being in check with your emotions, the greater your resilience will be when you are faced with challenges.
Yes, definitely.
Right?
Well, it gives you a chance to pause before you react. Because I think that's a big portion of it is that we don't take the time to just pause and sit with something before we actually have a response. And you don't have to have a response straight away. You can go away and you can have a think about where you sit with this particular topic before you actually come back with a response. We're not talking about really heated, well, I don't think we are. We're not talking about massive conflict here where things and energies are really, really high. We're talking about, how really we should deal with those sort of negative things that kind of trigger us in that space where we feel really uncomfortable.
And challenging interactions with other people, which happen all the time.
All the time.
Right? So, like one of the things that I want you to think about is, how much work am I doing to keep myself in a cool, calm and collected space on a regular basis, right? Because that is essentially the essence, right?
Yeah.
And then, just like Tracey said, you don't have to respond straight away. And one of the reasons why I keep on reinforcing the idea of doing daily practice is because when you do it, you are less irritable. You're less likely to be annoyed and frustrated by people's opinions and behaviors than when you feel that you're kind of running on empty and you're not kind of checking in with yourself.
Yeah, and we know that when we have these sort of conflicts, we are pushing out a lot of cortisol. We're having a fight or flight response. We're making our heart race, our breath increases. We're going into that kind of run mode or aggressive mode. And so if we're able to sit back and really focus and work on our central nervous system and bring it into a nice calm place, we do get better at dealing with these scenarios every single time. It's not going to happen overnight because this is something that people might have learnt, their whole lives, and then all of a sudden, they go, okay, I'm going to make a change and I'm going to make it for the better. So forgive yourself if you mess up because that's going to happen. But as long as you're in check with yourself and you're calming your central nervous system down, you're actually going to feel better for that. The person who you're talking with is going to feel better from that. And, there are some people out there that do like to push the buttons because they know how you're going to react to those things as well.
They've grown up realizing that they get a reaction, right? So they've learnt this. It's not entirely like a manipulative or mean thing. They've learned that this is the way the world responds.
Yeah.
So this is where I want you to become, once again, a master of your own reactions, responses, mind and body. So when someone is saying something that is clearly pushing your buttons or offensive or mean or rude, like that statement has no value if you don't respond to it, right? Yeah. It's sort of like if I say something really mean to someone and they don't react, then it sort of like defeats the purpose,
Well,
right?
it holds no value.
Right,
Like, it holds no
exactly.
value. It has no energy, like no association with you at all.
Exactly.
And I think like that, I think when I think about this a little bit more, I feel as though when we engage and we interact with people, we almost just need to hold the space external to us rather than internalizing things so much, because each conversation and each interaction doesn't need to be taken inward. It can be held externally. And then when you go away after that experience, it's really up to you how far you want to analyze and how far you want to actually engage with that interaction, you know, and internalize it then. But up until that point, I mean, you don't have to bring it into yourself. You can just hold that space for someone who might want to vent or get something out of their system or whatever that might be, but you have the choice. I guess that's what I'm saying is you do have the choice in how you handle that information that's coming towards you as well.
Absolutely. And so one of the things that is really common in communication is when someone says something to someone else, the person that is receiving that information, more likely than not, is getting ready to reply. They're not actually listening to what is being said. So let's say someone says something rude or mean, and instead of you immediately responding and replying to that in a defensive way, you could just sit there and go, oh, I think that's really interesting that you feel that way.
Yes,
right?
I love
just
that.
kind of like you're not being demeaning.
Yeah.
But you're not taking it personally. You're just kind of like very eloquently throwing it back to the other person, going, oh, that's interesting that you feel that way.
Yeah.
And then that person either might retaliate, might calm down. We don't know. But if you continue to eloquently give that back to the person that is being, you know, defiant or challenging, you are not reacting. You are in control.
Yeah.
And it's almost like as if someone's throwing some energy at you and you're catching it and you're just gently throwing it back to them.
It's really funny you say that, because as you were talking just then, I was kind of envisioning a fireball, and I was kind of like, imagine it's a fireball and someone's throwing a fireball at you and you're kind of just holding it, but what you're throwing back at them is just the ash and the black smoke, but not anything else significant. And so if you engage with someone and you're throwing fire back, you can imagine how quickly that gets out of control.
Totally.
Right, because it's
and
just
that's
fire, fire.
That's like a defensive response, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so if you are in a place and you can like not absorb that energy, just hold that energy and go, oh, that's really interesting. Like that's, you know, tell me some more about how you're feeling right now. You're fizzling out that fire, aren't you? You're kind of like, and my mind automatically is going to like a symbolic type way of going, oh, okay, I've just caught a fireball, but I'm just kind of crushing it in my hand, and like the ash is kind of just dropping on the ground because it's not affecting me.
No.
And I'm not allowing it to affect me. I'm just, taking it as interesting information.
Absolutely. And this is where we want you to not take stuff personally, right? So, and this is where daily practice plays a massive role. Like this is when it's sort of like if you've been practicing to run and you do like a little bit each day and then it starts getting bigger and bigger, the day that you're really going to need to run, you're going to be so grateful because you're going to pull all of that training together. This is very similar. You are training your mind to be more emotionally resilient, for you to be grounded, be less vulnerable and susceptible to other people's energies being thrown at you. So one of the really beautiful things that you can also do is simply go, I can see that you're upset right now. I'm going to remove myself from the situation and we can come back to this when you're feeling better.
Yeah.
Right? Not necessarily the word calmer, like when people tend to react to someone saying just calm down.
Oh, yeah,
They're
don't they?
quite clearly wound up, right?
Yeah.
But you have the choice to say respectfully, I can see that you're upset.
Or I can see this is important to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly. And I'm going to choose to walk away and come back to this conversation when we're both in a better space.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love that.
So I want you to think about the responses that you're having when people are throwing negative energy at you. Don't be like this dumping ground of negative energy. So don't take it either. There are many eloquent, respectful, and assertive ways of walking away from situations and diffusing them. But doing your daily work, getting on top of your health will allow you to feel more grounded in yourself, more confident to deal with that conflict. And then once you're out of that space, the beauty of that is it's not going to linger. The likelihood of you dwelling on this and taking it really seriously and really to heart is going to be so much less if you're doing that daily work, because you're going into that self-assurance, you're going into that self-confidence, that self-love with that daily practice by looking after your body, by looking after your mindset, by making sure that you're sleeping well, all of the things that we talk about. So self-care is absolutely paramount, because then that is the behavior that is saying to yourself, hey, you know what? I'm rock solid here.
Yeah, or that you've got the capacity to deal with a particular topic when it comes up as well, because sometimes we just don't, and we aren't aware of that. We're kind of going into conversations a little bit mindlessly because our energies are just not vibrating on the other person's level. And so it does take a little bit of practice in that sense, because you need to be a bit more aware of where you are actually at that point. If you've actually got the capacity to have a conversation with someone, by all means, but maybe check in with yourself first and know that it's okay to put a pause and kind of pin it, validate the person in saying, I hear this is important to you and I respect what you're saying, but I just don't have the energy at the moment to give this the attention that it deserves, and can I come back to it at a later point? That's both nurturing to the other person because you're hearing what they're saying, but it's also nurturing to yourself because you're actually giving yourself the space you need so that you can tackle that in a point of time when you've got the attention that you need to give to it.
Totally. And you're also putting in really healthy boundaries in place,
yeah,
which
I love
is
that.
so important. And look, I am well aware that not everyone has the right routine or lifestyle or circumstances to be sleeping well and eating well and meditating every single day. I'm totally aware of that. So if you find yourself in a space where you are going through a very challenging phase in your life, where your sleep's out of whack, where there's shit going on left, right, and center in your life, and you're really not in a headspace to deal with a lot, when you are sort of confronted with conflict that you don't necessarily have to deal with right there and then, own that lack of capacity that you have in that time by saying, you know what, I'm not in the right headspace to deal with this, and so I'm going to come back to this later on. And people are so afraid of kind of saying no, and people are so afraid of putting those boundaries in place. But the more you can start doing it with smaller things, the easier it's going to get to eventually do it with things that have a greater value and significance to you. So I really hope that's given our listeners some tips about how to deal with challenging and conflictive interactions with other people.
Yeah, that's really great. And by all means, I mean, obviously at the beginning we said this is something that's coming to us both by email and things that we've encountered in our clinics. If you have any other questions, please keep them coming because we are loving all of the feedback. And like I've mentioned before, if you love what you're hearing and it really resonates with you, please make sure to share this, even if it's just one friend or one family member that you think might get something from our conversations. We're here to serve others. That's our passion. And we want to inspire and help other people along their journey. So,
and on that note, before we go, we had someone call us up and say that they had heard an episode that resonated so much with them that they forwarded it on to a friend, and that friend was going through a really challenging situation, and it gave them some skills to deal with it. There's nothing that makes us happier than hearing about that stuff because Like, that's what we live and breathe. Like, we genuinely want people to embody and use some of the tips and skills that we're sharing.
Yep.
So it's not just about helping us grow, but it's about helping people we love to have better skills to deal with the challenging aspects of this human existence.
Yay. All right, cool. Well, we're going to leave you guys and we'll catch you next time. See you later.
See you later.
The information, views and opinions expressed on this podcast should not be used or treated as a substitute for nutritional, medical, psychological or other advice by a qualified health professional. Hosts and guests on the podcast express their own opinions, experiences and conclusions. Nothing in the podcast should be used to diagnose, treat, cure or prevent any medical condition. The podcast is not intended to replace any medical or mental health treatment. All information and advice provided is for general well-being and does not take individual cases into consideration. Neither Tracey Soltis, Kali Alfaro, or any sponsor endorse the opinions, views or conclusions expressed or shared on the podcast. Tracey Soltis and Kali Alfaro take no responsibility for any symptoms or consequences as a direct or indirect result of the podcast.